Hello and welcome to the commentary box. I am Sam Turner as always, and as always we are also joined by Jake Griffiths. Hello Jake, how are you today?
I'm good, not too bad. Bit of a croaky throat, which I've not been expecting, but you know my commitment to the commentary box. I will be here on the podcast.
Indeed, and me too. I think with university I've just been so ill, and we were talking this before, like you've been ill a few times, I've been ill a few times. You know, university it's just like a plague of like you know. But yeah, we both made it on today, and we're both recording this in the morning, and hopefully be back home for Christmas in the next few days, because of course we're still at university. But yeah, Christmas is on the horizon, so this is kind of going to be a podcast about the Champions League and Europa League, mainly about the Champions League, and then we're going to be talking a bit about atmosphere at football stadiums in the modern era, and then lastly we're going to be touching on a bit about Yaya Toure after the news that his contract has been mutually basically annulled by Olympiacos, and he might be going to the Premier League, so we'll be discussing a bit about that. But yes, with no further ado, we will be jumping straight into the Champions League. So it was a good night for English teams and Scottish teams in Europe, as basically every team but Rangers went through. Of course, Tottenham, Man United, Manchester City and Liverpool all went through in their groups in the Champions League, with Liverpool managing to beat Napoli 1-0 on Tuesday, and Tottenham managing to secure a 1-1 draw at the new camp, sorry. Both teams managing just to scrape through, and of course Manchester City and Man United were already through, and then Chelsea and Arsenal again, who were already through, both managed to get out of the Europa League groups. Sadly for Rangers, that was not the case. They lost in Vienna to Rapid Vienna, meaning they didn't go through after quite a good campaign in the Europa League under Steven Gerrard. But as for Celtic, they managed to scrape through again, even though they did lose to Leipzig 2-1. So yeah, I was just wondering who you think, Jake, will go furthest in the Champions League out of the English teams, and then who you think will go furthest in the Europa League out of the English and Scottish teams.
Sure. Well, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was I always think of City instantly, and then I remember in the Champions League last year when I think Liverpool beat City and knocked them out, and I think that was quite a big shock to everyone. I think some people could see it coming, possibly, with the way that Liverpool was playing. They're such attacking football, could be quite a threat to City, and I would have gone to City again to think, well, out of all the teams, you know, I think they definitely they topped their group. They only lost one game. Obviously, no one really expected them to lose any, to be honest. But I think with Manchester United, just to sort of rule teams out, things like that, I think Manchester United will get a couple of knockout wins, but I can't see them going the furthest. I can probably say the same with Tottenham as well. Like I can see them doing all right in the Champions League this year, getting maybe a little bit further than they did before, but not into sort of the last 4 or the last 8, things like that. Liverpool, I think I can see doing well. Obviously, top of the Premier League at the moment as well. That's certainly gonna help them. But they did lose 3 games in the Champions League, which seems quite weird. Only so winning 3, losing 3, and they've gone into second place and gone through still. So I think I'm going to go with Liverpool, same as last time. But I can see City doing well. I feel like Manchester City maybe will not do as well as they did last time in the Champions League. I think they're almost, because they've done so well in the Premier League so far, and everyone's sort of expecting them to maybe win or at least come second in that. And now, for example, they've just gone down to second. I know managers and players, they all say, you know what, say if for example, there's an interview with a City player or a manager after the game, and they might get asked about dropping down to second place and how that affects them. And obviously they will say, you know what, we're not bothered, like we're focusing on our games, who we got next, things like that. But it will take an effect, like there's going to be some psychological impact on dropping down into that second place and knowing that you're not top of the league. and it'd be in the back of their heads, and it might be a little bit difficult. And I just feel like they might slightly focus more on on the Premier League, because that is almost what they're expected to do. I feel like with the Champions League last year for City, they didn't do quite as well as they wanted to. So if they do a little bit better, that's sort of what we think will happen. But if Liverpool win the league this year, and it'll be like the City mistake or a loss or a draw, I think it'll be quite a big thing. So, in my opinion, I think Liverpool will go the furthest. I think after that it'll be City, and then I'm going to go Tottenham, and then Manchester United. I feel like United just aren't quite at the races, to use quite a cliche phrase, but it's quite weird, because it seems like they're still doing all right. Like, they went through in the Champions League and they did well enough to go through, but I just never really see an inspiring performance from them that makes me feel like, you know what, this team's going to do well in the league or the Champions League this year. I never really get that sort of spark or if inspiration that, you know, United fans will be looking for in their teams to go, you know what, we're doing well, we're going to do well, let's see how far we can get. You know, we're not overconfident, we just think we're going to do, just have an impressive tournament. So, yeah, I think that's my opinion. Would you agree with what I've said? Would you rank in the order of the teams of where you think they'll go the furthest? Would that be similar to mine?
I think it would be very similar. Almost exactly the same. The only thing I'd kind of mention is about Tottenham, and I think Tottenham still probably are outsiders in terms of English teams to win the Champions League or to go quite far, but I think they could be a bit of a dark horse. I mean, I know we've touched on them before earlier in the season in one of our podcasts about how they haven't made any signings, but I was listening to a few other podcasts, I think one of the BBC Daily podcast, and someone brought up a really good point, is that because they haven't brought any players in, the team has become a lot more kind of Pochettino's team almost. They've had to become better, and they've become a better team. And they've actually had some big nights in Europe this season, because of course for the first 3 games they only had 1 point, and they still managed to get through. And to go to the new camp and draw 1-1. That is no mean feat. I mean, I know Barcelona had a slightly weakened side in there with no Messi, but if you think about the teams that have gone to Barcelona, the big teams, and that have not come out with anything, it's just a magnificent result. And if they can recreate that kind of result in the knockout stages, I can see Tottenham being a bit of a dark horse. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you. Man United, for me, they don't seem like to me that they will ever have a big night in Europe this season. I don't think they'll go to somewhere like Juventus or Bayern Munich and get a victory. I just don't see it happening. There's something about them at the moment under Mourinho. There's not that spark that you need in Europe to try and be a bit more creative and outwit the European sides, because we see English teams play European sides and they have to change their game so much. Like Liverpool, when they play away from home in Europe, they can't be pressing as much because they'll just lose out all the time. They need to almost sit back. And with Man United, I just can't see them adapting that well going to another side in Europe. So I would agree with you there. Then as for Manchester City and Liverpool, I think Manchester City, their one true goal now is to win the Champions League. And I don't know if this is the season, because again, I think there's something lacking for them in Europe. I think they'll struggle against a team like Juventus again, or a team like Real Madrid, because they don't have the experience yet. And I mean, I know they've been in the Champions League a few seasons now, but I just don't think they've still got enough in them to have a good campaign. But Liverpool, with Jurgen Klopp, I think can go the furthest for me out of all the teams.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. And just to touch on your Tottenham point, I think it's a really good point, and I would definitely agree that with Pochettino's side, if we're not bringing in new players, that means he's got the belief in his players and they are good enough. But not only that, but they need to step up their game to remain good enough and sort of to show some trust, to go, you know what, yes, they like, we are good enough players for this team. You don't need to worry about us, for example. Like, it's like we don't need to replace. We are good enough, because I think the likes of someone, for example, Lamella. I think Lamella's having not a bad season this year, and I think that's partly down to the reason they didn't sign anyone. Because think about it, imagine you're a player and you're not playing too regularly in your squad, and you feel like you could be one of those players who maybe gets sold, or someone comes in to replace you or something like that. Because I feel like Lamela would be in that sort of situation within the squad. He's not a regular starter, but he gets involved every now and again. And I feel like this season he's definitely stepped on the gas a bit. And then when he does play, he does do quite well. He's getting the odd goal or assist here and there. And he is playing some good football, which is great for him, and it's great for the manager and great for the club in general. I think someone as well, like Lucas Moura, obviously came in a couple of seasons ago. When he came in at first, I think he did quite well at the very beginning, but sort of died off a little bit. Did okay here and there, but this season he's doing quite well, like getting quite a lot of goals. We're seeing him score goals where there is a lot of it's more of a sometimes just a solo goal in a way. We're seeing him take on players, going past, shooting from distance, to prove that he's got that sort of just that the sort of versatile side to him, that he can, not only is he there for helping create goals and scoring your goal here and there, but he's not afraid to take one on himself and do some damage to the opposition. So I think that's a good point you raised, and I think you can definitely see that in terms of the Premier League this season. And obviously, like you say, to go away to the new camp, getting a draw there is a very, very good result for Tottenham. And in the end, exactly what they needed to go through. I'm just actually looking at the tables here, and I just thought I'd pull out a couple of just interesting little points. So when we look at Group C, so the one with PSG, Liverpool in, Liverpool lost 3 of their 6 games, obviously winning the other 3. Now, Napoli only lost 1 game, but they obviously didn't go through due to drawing 3, and their goal difference wasn't as high. So how someone was crazy as that? Like, you play 6 games, you only lose 1 of them, and then you get knocked out because another team has lost 3, but they've also won 3. I think you'd be quite frustrated if you're a Napoli fan there.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great night for Italian teams, with only Roma and who else? Juventus getting through, obviously, and Napoli and Inter both losing out to English sides. But as you said, yeah, for Napoli to draw or win all but 1 and still not go through, it just seems just like a kick in the teeth, really. But I think from that group, there was always going to be one side that was going to drop down, that is too big to go down, if that makes any sense. And we've seen Napoli drop down multiple times in the last few years, and not because they're a bad side, just because I think they're in that unlucky position where their coefficient means they get drawn against big sides, if that makes any sense, and it's kind of like repeating on them. But yeah, they'll definitely be a contender in the Europa League, Napoli, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think looking at other teams here, I just thought I'd pick out that Porto won 5 of their 6 games.
Yeah, they'll
15 goals in that. That is in terms of encouragement for fans and players and a bit of confidence there, that's certainly going to gift a lot. But looking at the group they were in, Lokomotiv Moscow, can't imagine them being too much of a threat to Porto. Galatasaray are so-and-so in the Champions League. Sometimes they got quite some good players in the squad, playing some really good football, but sometimes it just feels like it doesn't quite click. And then Schalke are a good team. I do think Porto have definitely done well. How far do you think Porto can take that form, Sam? Are you seeing it as more of just a little bit of a group stage luck, and it may not continue too much further, or can you see that momentum carrying on throughout their tournament?
That's a good point you raised, because Porto now will be in the top seed in the next round. Obviously, they'll play someone in second place, so automatically you think they probably have a chance of getting to the next round after that. But as you pointed out, the group was not too difficult. It was a lot of teams around the size of Porto, but no big, massive teams like your Manchester Cities or your Real Madrids. But we shouldn't take anything away from Porto, because they've obviously had a great Champions League season so far. And we've obviously seen Porto under Mourinho winning the Champions League before, so I wouldn't rule them out. They could be a bit of a dark horse. And they're always up there in the Portuguese Liga. So I wouldn't rule them out, but I just think they might it might just be a flash in the pan.
Yeah, no, I can see what you mean. Just to look down to the other teams, one team that didn't quite do so well is AEK Athens. Do you know what the AEK stands for, Sam? I don't actually know.
Oh, I do not know. Let me just try and find my because I think I've got an AAK Athens shirt in my
Okay.
collection. No, it doesn't say on there. You know what? I'll search it up. You talk a bit about that group, and I'll try and search it up in the meantime.
Sure thing. Yeah, I was just going to mention on there. I think they're the only team that lost every single game, and then to show almost the complete opposite of that, we can look at Group G, was probably the tightest group out of all, because you've got Real Madrid who won the group in the end, ending on 12, which is quite an expected a figure for a team to top the group to get on. And then you've got Roma in second on 9, which is a fair bit, but not a huge amount. I think most teams maybe end on about 10 or 10 and above. The teams who do win to get quite a dominant victory. And then you've got the team in third, which is Victoria Plzen. I'm not going to lie, I've not heard of them. But then obviously CSKA Moscow in fourth. Both of those teams ended on 7 points. So both of these teams, they both won 2 games, drew 1, and then lost 3. Just to highlight a very, very tight group there, I can't imagine the frustration that some of those fans would feel, knowing that they've been knocked out by 2 points, but obviously also coming bottom as well. Like, imagine you're a Moscow fan and you found out that your team has got 7 points in the Champions League. You're quite happy with that. But then to know that you finished in 4th place, certainly not so happy about that.
Yeah.
A very, very tight group there.
And especially when you consider that the 6 points that Lokomotiv Moscow got, was it Lokomotiv? It was Lokomotiv, was it?
CSKA
Moscow. Sorry, Moscow. They beat Real Madrid twice, getting clean sheets. So when you consider that as well, that's just horrible. And when you think they got clean sheets against Real Madrid as well, with Igor Akinfeyev getting 2 clean sheets. I think his first 2 clean sheets in the Champions League after like 46 matches. It's just a real kind of kick in the teeth.
Crazy.
Because like no one expects them to beat Real Madrid. They go to the Bernabeu, they beat them. They're at home, they beat them. But as you said, they don't even get Europa League because they're bottom of the group. It's just annoying. And as for the AEK Athens point, I have found out what it means, and in Greek it means Athletica Enosis Konstantopolis, and in English it would mean Athletic Union of Constantinople.
Okay, now we know.
You learn something every day.
Exactly, interesting little fact. Maybe I'll quiz you on that later on in the new year. See how you do.
But yes, I think that's basically the Champions League rounded up. Do you want to talk a bit about the Europa League? So like Chelsea and Arsenal and how they might do in the Europa League.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it should get a mention.
Yeah, so both Arsenal and Chelsea are through into the Europa League. And as I've mentioned before, there are some teams dropping down from the Champions League that are pretty big, such as Inter Milan and Napoli. And I'm just wondering, would you, with Chelsea and Arsenal, do you think they can go far in the Europa League? And obviously, do you think it would be a real big achievement for one of these teams to win the Europa League?
I think, looking at Chelsea and Arsenal now, obviously last season none of them had a particularly amazing year. But you could look at the new managers coming in now, and you can look at the way that those two teams are playing in the Premier League. Obviously in the Champions League, both of their teams topped their group. I think Chelsea won 5 of their 6 games, drawing 1, and that was exactly the same with Arsenal as well. So both getting comfortable victories and topping their group very nicely there. I think we can mention that I think we can see these teams going far. I think they've shown a lot in the Premier League as well as the Europa League this year, and we can see them sort of. I could probably say that I can see Arsenal and Chelsea getting into the semi-finals. That's a bold statement from myself, but I'm gonna put that out there. That is going to be my prediction. I can see both the English teams getting there. to touch on Celtic as well, of course. Them not doing so well in the Champions League, not topping their group, but of course going through in the end, finishing on 3 wins, 3 losses, which is a fair way of getting their way through. Not done amazing, but probably done as maybe they were expected or they were happy to anyway. I think that's quite a good achievement for them to go through. I think looking at their group, maybe they would have been looked to come maybe possibly third. So a good result nonetheless. But I can see, to go back to your question of how big would it be, I think, for example, if Celtic won the Europa League, I think it'd be absolutely huge for the club and very, very big for Brendan Rodgers. I think if Chelsea or Arsenal won the Europa League, I still think this would be quite a big achievement because obviously both managers having their first years in the Premier League and their first years with their clubs, obviously. And what an impact that would be for them to get a good finish in the league and then to win the Europa League as well, obviously automatically qualifying for Champions League next year, regardless of where they come in the Premier League. So a very, very... I just feel like I make a big impact. I feel like some people almost underestimate the Europa League, which I can understand. For example, if you're the likes of, I don't know, Manchester City, and you've had an okay year, but you've been knocked out early, and you get put into Europa League and they won it. It wouldn't be a massive deal. I think it'd be more of a shock if they didn't win the league rather than them getting knocked out. Didn't win the Europa League rather than getting knocked out in the Champions League group stage. So, yeah, I can see it being a big deal for those 2 clubs. Well, obviously Celtic as well, and it can make a massive difference. But to sort of, if we want to look to compare how big that would be, do you think it would be more impressive for Arsenal or Chelsea to win the FA Cup this season, Sam, or the Europa League?
Well, that's a good question. I would agree with you, just going back before I answer the question.
Go on.
That it's really big for Celtic, and I would love to see Celtic win the Europa League, and it's probably bigger for Celtic than it is for Chelsea and Arsenal. But as you said again, Arsenal and Chelsea would love to win this because obviously new managers, great way to start, and it's a great competition. But then compared to the FA Cup, that is a tough one because the FA Cup has got so much history. It's kind of, apart from the Premier League, of course, it's showing that you are one of the best teams in England, and I'm going to say it's bigger to win the FA Cup, to be honest. I mean, if you're winning the Champions League, of course the Champions League is bigger than winning the FA Cup, but I think compared to the Europa League, the FA Cup is slightly bigger. But I think it depends on the team as well, though. Because if you're a big team, you want to win I think you want to win the FA Cup. If you're a smaller team, say like a West Ham who qualify for Europe, maybe the Europa League is bigger. I don't know. It depends on your perspective, but they're fairly similar. But I would say the FA Cup is bigger.
Yeah, I think this is quite an interesting point to raise. I think that'd be definitely something we should do a tweet on. In fact, I will do that now for all the viewers.
Yeah.
So they can get involved live. We can get a bit of feedback at the end of the video.
Yeah, if you're not following us on Twitter, because I'll just plug it a bit. You can follow us at Box Commentary. Yeah, that's our Twitter at.
But yeah, no, I think it's a good point actually. I think what would people remember more? That's what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking FA Cup. Yeah. I can't remember the previous winners of the Europa League. I'm not even sure if Manchester United won the Europa League lately. Have they? I think they might have.
Yeah, they beat. I think was it 2 seasons ago? I think they beat Ajax.
Celta Vigo. Oh, okay. Celta Vigo for the semi-final.
Yeah. But yeah, I think if you think about a Wigan winning the FA Cup, that would be. I don't know. Would that be bigger than them winning Europa League? If they ever won the Europa League, I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. Interesting, but I think it definitely raises a good point, and no, I will do a tweet on that if you don't mind introducing the Yaya Toure section. Will I just do that?
Yes, of course. So Yaya Toure is a free agent once again. Yes, the kind of the world-renowned Ivorian midfielder was, of course, released by Manchester City last season, and he found his way back to Olympiacos a club he had played for in his youth. Well, it didn't go to plan really. He only managed to play 5 games, I think, in all competitions. And now we're in December, and he's had his contract kind of mutually agreed to kind of stop due to financial reasons. But he has already come out saying he would like to make a move to the Premier League, and he did say that before he moved to Olympiacos, so he must be very keen on kind of cementing his way back into the Premier League. And of course, everyone's been thinking West Ham, West Ham, West Ham, but Manuel Pellegrini has already come out and said that Yaya Toure is not the priority at West Ham, not fully ruling him out, but kind of saying, well, we're probably going to look at other players. Cough, cough, Samir Nasri. I would definitely go for Yaya Toure. If you didn't know, we did a podcast and we talked a bit about Samir Nasri a few weeks ago. But yeah, he's already been ruled out by West Ham, so I'm wondering where else in the Premier League would he fit in. I think you were saying a bit earlier that he's on wages of like 290,000 a week.
Yeah.
So can any club afford him really as well?
Yeah, I think we look at some of the clubs you can afford, and instantly Manchester City comes to mind, but I cannot see a reunion happening there. Like it didn't exactly end awful, but I just can't see that happening. I can't really see him going to, because I feel like only the top clubs can afford him, but I don't feel like the top clubs exactly want him. And then the bottom clubs who would love to have a Yaya Toure, I don't think they've got the funds to be able to pay that sort of player. Personally, I can't see a reunion happening for him in the Premier League. I don't think it'll happen. I think he'll end up going somewhere like the MLS or the Chinese league. I know he's turned down offers there already and turned down moving there in general, but I can't see where he's going to fit in. Can you name one club, Sam, who can either financially be able to afford him, but will also want him?
Well, most sides, I reckon, apart from like the top 6, would want him. And like, I don't know why, but a team that straight away came to mind was Huddersfield. I don't know why. I think he would. I don't know if he. I just like the sounds of him at Huddersfield, if that makes any sense. It'd be quite interesting to see such a big name player play for Huddersfield. As I think last week we were talking about how they got a good teamwork and they don't have big superstars. But something in my mind, just the first thing I thought was Huddersfield, and I don't know why. But again, financially, they would not be able to afford his wages.
Yeah.
It would completely kind of wreck the club's budget. So that I can rule Huddersfield out. But apart from that, the only club would be West Ham, because they've got the money to have him. They've probably got the want to have him. But again, he's already been ruled out. I'm trying to think of other clubs that might be in the financial situation to have him. But most of the clubs we're thinking that he could go to, why would they want him? Because they've already got like a secure kind of team already within. Like maybe Everton, but I don't think he would work there. Maybe Watford. No, probably not money-wise. So I just think, as you said, I think he'll just end up going to America or China. I can see him going to America more than China. I feel like he wants to be more of a superstar to a team rather than a kind of getting the money, if that makes any sense as well. So I think he'll be on his way to America sooner or later. Yeah,
no, I can agree with that. I feel like they're the only one these days who can afford players. I feel like we quite often see players the likes of sort of Wayne Rooney and like David Villa and Iniesta, those sort of players who, once they've had their career in a way, they decide, you know what, we're going to go to China or the MLS, maybe a slightly relaxed part of their career, where like the pressure obviously is on for them to perform well, but I feel like deep down it's never going to mean as much to playing as the club that they sort of made it big with. I think the only couple of players that really come to mind, Sam, to sort of contradict that would be that you can see like sort of Cristiano Ronaldo and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. They're the ones who sort of challenged that idea and philosophy, where they went, we're actually going to push ourselves even more. We're going to go play places for a while, and then we're going to move on to like sort of the big name clubs. Ibrahimovic doing that in multiple countries and doing very well in each of those. Obviously, Ronaldo doing it in only 3 so far, but still doing very, very well. And I actually saw an interesting thing the other day about Ronaldo saying that Messi should possibly even join him in the Italian league, or he said something about he respects Messi's choice to stay loyal and stay with Barcelona. However, he's only done well in one country, and can he do it again, or to challenge him to see if he can prove himself in multiple countries. Just to sort of, I know it's a slight diversion, but we're just sort of cap on that bit. Would you, if just a quick one, could you see Messi doing as well as he's done with Barcelona in any club around the world in terms of the top clubs and the top leagues?
Definitely, absolutely, definitely. Like, I can see why Ronaldo wants him to move, because I think Ronaldo thrives off of competition in terms of seeing another player that could be better than him. Because if he doesn't see someone playing better than him, I think he struggles to find the motivation to try and be better. If that makes any sense, he works off that competition. But yeah, with Messi, I think he could go in any side in the world and improve it, no matter what. I mean, I think Pele said something about Messi saying he can only shoot. I think that was a bit harsh of Pele to say he can only shoot, because, like I said, basically saying he can't head the ball or anything. I think that's a bit harsh, because you've got to look at players in terms of what they're good at. Not every player is great at everything. But I think Messi, he's got that kind of the commitment to go anywhere. I think obviously it's got to be the right team that play the right style of football, but I think any team can adapt to help Messi perform to their best. And I would love to see him in Italy, love to see him in Roma, basically, at Roma. So fingers crossed, maybe next few years we could see him out of Barcelona and into the Serie A, but I'm not so sure. I think he'll be loyal to Barcelona, and I think either way, he can perform anywhere in the world. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just to actually go back to what we were talking about, which was Yaya Toure, before I slightly diverted off the case. I'm just looking at an article here and just some of the comments made by Olympiacos that I just sort of read out, and just because we were talking about it earlier, we were saying that one of them here is saying that Yaya is and remains an important member of the Olympiacos family, who has marked a central part of the history of the club. Olympiacos would like to thank him for everything he has offered to the club. And then another one which went to say that Yaya will remain deeply devoted to the club and wishes to Olympiacos lots of success. Yaya is leaving as a friend, and the doors at Olympiacos will always be open for him. Our paths will surely cross again. Which made me and Sam think a bit there, and a little bit confused how, well, only according to Wikipedia, he's only played 2 games, but we know he played 5. It just didn't really make much sense how connected they would be over 5 games, but we actually found out that he did play, I think it was about 20-odd games for Olympiacos back in 2005-06 season. And Sam was mentioning then that was obviously before he made his move to Monaco and then on to Barcelona and City, which is where his career really saw him at the the top stage. So there must have been something at Olympiacos that went well for Monaco to pick him up and to continue his path of success in his career. So I think we can see maybe how those clubs had that very special bond that they were going to. Just to look at his international career as well, I got a feeling that he. I know he's been playing for Ivory Coast, obviously, for an incredibly long time. I think I'm just reading here that he's actually been to 6 African Cup of Nations tournaments, which is a very, very good stat, obviously, to have and to hold. I can't remember, but do you think or do you know of that he has won the African Player of the Year?
I think he has won the African Player of the Year quite a lot of times. I think it was only recently that he lost it after, like, I think 4 in a row or something to Aubameyang, and he got very annoyed. But I think, yeah, he's won it quite often, and as you said, he's been involved in the Ivory Coast and the African Cup of Nations quite often. He has won one in 2014, I think it was, when they beat Ghana 0-0 on penalties, and I think Bonnie missed a penalty in the end. But yeah, I remember watching that game. But yeah, he's had a tremendous career, both internationally, continental, and kind of worldwide, and he's got to be seen as one of the greats of not only African football, but world football, and I don't think he gets the credit sometimes. Thinking about it, I'm just thinking about it now, and he's won so much with so many teams, and he doesn't really get that credit, if that makes any sense, as one of the greats. So hopefully he might get a bit more credit, but I think he needs to find a club or do something quickly to help save his reputation, if that makes any sense. So it'd be definitely interesting to see where he goes next, basically.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. I'm just reading it here. I didn't see it before, but it said that Toure won the BBC African Footballer of the Year on a public vote for the second time, and that was after he led them to victory in the 2015 African Cup of Nations. So I think, I'm not sure if the African Player of the Year is probably slightly different to the BBC's one, but we can obviously see how much that has highlighted its success. Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting where he goes here. I don't think he's going to go to the Premier League. I think, to sum up what you were saying earlier, you don't think he will either. You think he'd be ended up in the MLS?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be a fair statement to make. I think that sort of wraps it up there, and then on to our final session today, which I sort of suggested and mentioned. It's a little bit of one which is sort of out there and it's not really discussed so much, but I was just sort of scrolling through various social media the other day, and I was seeing things about lots of people tend to make sort of these posts or comments online where they often say about, atmosphere at football grounds, and sort of like there's a bit of rivalry / banter between sort of what clubs got the best atmosphere. You can see that people say a lot of things about Anfield. Apparently, they see you never walk alone at the beginning of the game. It's very loud, very powerful, emotional, get the team up and going. But apart from that, it's not too much either. And being at quite a few football matches in the last month or two, I've never really seen, obviously, the clubs sort of a lower category, more sort of Championship or League One football, but not really seeing a great amount of atmosphere, really. I think when I went to see West Brom, they were the only team that sort of showed a bit of atmosphere that was sort of continuing for most of the game. But it just seems a little bit of a point to raise. I think there'd be sort of mini sections, little things I'll ask you, Sam, but just to start, do you think in general the atmosphere at grounds is potentially getting worse over the years and it's not as loud as it used to be? I'll come on to my second point after, but I'll ask you that first.
I think it depends on the club and the stadium you go to, because of course there is a rise in football tourism, and like people like myself, I like to go to matches that not necessarily the team I support, which might mean that people don't get as involved in like the chants, the singing, kind of the overall atmosphere, because they're kind of more of a tourist rather than a supporter, if that makes any sense. So like teams such as Chelsea, Fulham, Watford, these London teams that are sometimes advertised as like, oh, have a trip to London and go see a Premier League team. That these are the type of teams that maybe attract these tourists, and maybe as a result have slightly subdued atmospheres. So you could see a rise on that, but also you got to think that lots of clubs have this kind of spirit, as you said, like Liverpool, and I would say Liverpool's and Anfield, they're not, their atmosphere isn't getting any worse. It's probably getting better, if that makes any sense. It's just, it depends on the club, basically.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. And just to move on to my second point of maybe sort of why some people feel that way about certain things. You also see a lot of things about people saying they almost film too much at ground. I think me and Sam were saying earlier before we sort of went live that we are both a little bit guilty of this. I think most people are. Like, I think there's always a point in the game where you think, oh, that'd be a great photo. I'll take on my phone, maybe a corner you might want a video. But we sort of came to the conclusion that, when it is crunch time, when it is a penalty, or when it is a quick break on the counter-attack, you put down whatever you do and you're focused on the game and everyone's involved. You can hear the noise of the seats rattling up. People go to stand up, get ready to get a good angle, see if they score, and, it builds and builds and builds all the atmosphere and the tension. And it gets quite exciting to see those sort of big, important sort of turn points in the game. But you can see there's always people saying about, sort of touched on it a little bit about saying, like, is football coming a bit too touristy in terms of, are clubs getting the atmosphere that they certainly used to, or is it just, like you said, dependent on the club, dependent on sort of who the team are, who they're playing, how they're performing? If you got a team at the top of the league, they're playing incredible football week in, week out, winning games, exciting, attacking football. For example, let's say Liverpool, you're going to get a good atmosphere. You're going to get people want to go, want to cheer and sing on their team. They're happy for their success. But you've got a team down the bottom of the league in League One, and you've got an away game, and it's a cold night, and you're playing somewhere like Plymouth or Sunderland, like really far away. I know Sunderland aren't in the League One, but just an example, League Two, sorry. But are you going to get many fans in? Are you going to get a rocketing atmosphere that's going to get the team up and going every week? I think it doesn't happen so much. I think it depends on the team and the people. I think it's a subject where there's not quite a definitive answer. This reminds me a little bit of like the handball situation, where it's just a bit of a grey area, like no one's really sure. I know it's not a huge point, but I thought it'd be interesting to sort of just to at least touch on. And you also raised another good point about saying that, are there many people going to see games who they are just a tourist, or they're just not a fan of the club, they just might have got free tickets or something, and are they just not that fussed about joining in and cheering? I think, like, when I go to games, I like to get involved in the cheering that happens, singing, start to learn the songs and get involved in the game. But does everyone do that? Will I do that every time I go to see a football match? Probably not. So just to conclude that mini section, I think it's a very wide area. What sort of atmosphere do you get at Swansea, Sam? Is it quite consistent in terms of sort of noise and attendances, things like that, or is it quite very dependent, as you were saying, on sort of who you're playing and what time of year it is?
I think the Liberty, for one of the, like, if you looked at Premier League stadiums, I know we're not in the Premier League anymore, but Swansea and the Liberty is one of the probably the better stadiums for atmosphere. Whenever I go there, we're always singing. There's always kind of a great atmosphere. I mean, maybe during like the winter time and like when Bob Bradley was in charge, it became a bit kind of subdued, but I think that just happens with any club if you're going through a rough patch, and like if you've lost a few during winter, it's raining, you're gonna get kind of lulls. But with the Liberty, I think it is one of the better stadiums for atmospheres. It's so loud, the stadium just kind of keeps the noise in. So it was definitely probably the best atmosphere I've witnessed at a football game is probably at the Liberty. Especially, I think I've mentioned this before already, but like the Leeds game I went to this just before I went to university is probably the best game I've ever seen in terms of gameplay and atmosphere, because it was so end to end. It just the whole stadium was just on edge basically, and the Leeds fans were great because they kind of kept on singing. They brought like 2,000 of them on like a 6-hour journey, so that was pretty good. But yeah, Liberty definitely has been the best place I've been. As for the worst place I've been, just to touch on that, probably maybe Loftus Road, the QPR ground.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to point out this particular club, but I just remember it being
QPR fans get tweeted out and get turned around.
Yeah, sorry QPR fans. I'm just, Swansea have a bit of a bad record at QPR. And the time I went there, maybe I was just trying to hide the noise out, but we lost 5-0 or 4-0 away to QPR when I was there, and I still just don't remember the atmosphere being that great, even though they were winning 4-0. So sorry, QPR fans. It's nothing against you personally. It's just something against basically David. Is it Mackey? Someone Mackey? The QPR player.
Yeah, I think Jamie Mackey.
Jamie Mackey. And Charlie Austin probably at the time as well. So.
Yeah, no, I can understand what you mean. I'm not digging out Birmingham City fans here as well, for the record, but I was very, very lucky to get a ticket for the Birmingham Preston game not too long ago now, and they won 3-0. It was 0-0 at half time, won 3-0, but even then there just wasn't really much atmosphere around the ground, and I was and they were getting chances, and it was a fairly interesting game. And I was, I wanted to really get involved, but there just wasn't really that much singing. And there was about 25,000 fans. It's a nice stadium, and it was quite big. And every now and again, the chant might start to happen, but then it just sort of faded. There was only really one or two songs, and to sort of, I don't even, it's a good idea me mentioning West Brom after Birmingham fans, but I went to a West Brom game against Brentford.
Yeah.
And this game had about roughly the same fans. I think it was a tiny bit less. It was a Monday night, and it was 0-0 at half-time as well, and finished 1-1. And West Brom had quite a lot of chances in the game, but regardless of whether they were having chances or not, really, there was always songs happening for quite a long. And then when they were winning, they were singing like constantly and continually. And I think, you can look at the size of support they had, because obviously they used to be in the Premier League, but they were playing good football as well. And just quite nice to see. And because I went to a Villa game back in February as well. Not making any friends here,
Nah.
but that game they did lose by quite a bit, but that atmosphere was quite dull, really. Like, there wasn't really much to it. I've seen worse. I've seen, like, sometimes you go to a Gillingham home game and you lose by quite a lot, and you don't get much singing either. But yeah, I just feel like, because it was more recently the games I've been to and the songs I've been hearing and how much atmosphere there was, I think it was a good point to raise. But I think, so hopefully there's a lot of West Brom fans who listen to this rather than Villa and Blues fans. But I think West Brom was the best atmosphere that I went to out of all those games. Played the best football as well. Obviously they've got a bit more money being in the Premier League more lately as well. Voice did not go well there at all. Playing a bit better, obviously, like I was saying, being in the Premier League not too long ago, having sort of the best sort of atmosphere and singing and things like that. But no, it was I think it's quite an interesting sort of little point to talk about. I think if I was going to say, like you were saying, Sam, sort of the best team that I've seen for atmosphere, that's quite a tough one. I think
It's got to be the Gills, doesn't it? Priestfield.
well, they're definitely out there, but I'm thinking more of sort of away games when we've done well.
Yeah.
And there's been quite a bit of singing. I think Gillingham once played Charlton, and we drew 2-2 after being 2-0 up at half-time, which is annoying. But
Yeah.
in the game, there was a massive amount of atmosphere. And I think also, actually, Pompey away a couple of seasons ago when we won 3-1 and Connor Wilkinson scored a worldie and Lee Martin got two good ones as well. And I feel like when you're winning at a huge ground and you're away from home and it's a big team and you're not expected to win, just the feeling is amazing. And if you pull it off in the end to get the 3 points, it really does sort of spark you on for the rest of the season a little bit, or next couple of games at least. But yeah, no, I'd probably say Pompey a couple of years ago was the best. But I think that sort of wraps up all of our sections and the podcast today. Just to touch on before I hand over to you, Sam, about our we recently got a new form of social media that you guys can follow us on. We're on Snapchat, same as mainly of all our other ones as well, at Box Commentary. I've done a couple of snaps, Sam's done a couple too so far, just sort of saying things that are sort of going to keep you up to date, whether we've done a new tweet or whether we're currently recording, things like that, so you can be sort of aware and look out. Obviously, stay tuned for our Twitter, which reminds me, actually, I'm just going to check our Twitter, see if we got any votes on the poll that I made earlier about the what is bigger to win, the FA Cup or Europa League. And Sam, what was your if you were voting on it, what would you say your one would be?
Well, I voted midway through, and I voted the FA Cup. But yeah,
so did I. Sorry, do you want to read it out if you're looking at it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and FA Cup has got 50% of the vote, and of course Europa League has got 50% of the vote out of 6 votes. But of course you've got another 23 hours and 38 minutes to vote on that. And I don't know if you mentioned, but yeah, you can vote.
And sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
I've just loaded my Twitter up, and we've actually had one more vote in that meantime, Sam. And the FA Cup has stolen the day. 57% now from the FA Cup. So we've got live reaction here with 23 hours and 36 minutes left. 3 likes, 1 retweet. Thank you very much. Sorry, you can carry on.
But yeah, I was about to say you can go follow us on Twitter as well, which is also at Box Commentary. But yeah, before we isolate any more East Midlands and Midlands football fans, we shall probably call it a day today. Of course,
Yes.
check us out on Snapchat, check us out on Instagram. Of course, this podcast is going up on iTunes and it is going up on YouTube, so go check us out on both of those. Hope you have enjoyed today's podcast. We certainly have. Enjoy the run up to Christmas. Of course, we'll be doing podcasts all the way up to Christmas most likely. So it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me as well.
See ya.
Goodbye.